This is RT. Well, Libyan rebels say they've regained control of the strategic oil town of Ajdabiya from Colonel Gaddafi's forces. It comes as the country's officials claim that over 100 people were killed in the opening days of the coalition's strikes, which have now lasted a week. Meanwhile, NATO's gearing up to replace the US in leading the campaign. Let's get more on this now from RT's Paula Slee, who's waiting for us in Tripoli. So, Paula, we've heard about continued explosions from the overnight there. We've heard about a lack of supplies available to the people of Tripoli and surrounding areas. What is the situation like now in the Libyan capital, and what are you hearing about in the rest of the country?
Well, the capital city of Tripoli is essentially in lockdown. We're hearing now that within 2 days, fuel supplies here might very well run out. We're also hearing of shortages in food and water. Now, for 7 straight nights, the city has come under fire from those airstrikes from the coalition. The residents here are very, very frightened. Many of them are choosing not to go to work, to spend their days at home, barricaded in their homes, because they're very frightened in terms of what will happen in the coming days. Now, the state television is reporting that more than 100 people have been killed. It puts the figure at 114 people killed and some 445 wounded in the first 4 days of airstrikes. It's not making clear whether or not it's talking about civilian deaths or fighters, and certainly it is proving quite difficult to differentiate between the two here in Tripoli. We are hearing from rebels in the town of Ajdabiya. They have advanced there from Benghazi, and they say that they've been coming across civilian bodies, women and children in the road. But there too, it's difficult to discern whether the bodies were killed by coalition airstrikes or whether they were killed by Gaddafi's forces. We are hearing from the rebels themselves that they have now taken over the town of Ajdabiya. They say that they entered the town through the eastern part and that Gaddafi's men are now on the perimeter some 2 kilometers west of the city. But we are hearing from rebels complaints that they do not have enough weaponry or sufficient enough weaponry to take on the heavy weaponry of Gaddafi's soldiers. These reports have not been confirmed by the Libyan army itself, so we are very much relying on what the rebels are telling us. But certainly if they have taken over this town, it is a significant step in them being able to recapture towns and cities they lost in the last week. You need to remember that this time last week there was a very real fear that the town of Benghazi would be overthrown by Gaddafi's men. The situation on the ground, though, is such that it's taken the rebels a week to get this far. So many people are asking the question, well, for just how much longer is the international community going to be involved in this conflict if indeed the rebels are struggling to actually advance westwards back over land that they've already taken?
And when you talk about the role of the international community here in this military intervention in Libya, there seems to be a sense of animosity spreading across the Arab world at this point. Now the command of the operation will soon pass into NATO's hands. How are the Libyans reacting to such a switch?
Well, there was a press conference that was held here by the Libyan government a short time ago, and there the government was extremely critical of the coalition airstrikes. It says that they are not simply targeting neutral sites. They say that the coalition is not interested in only enforcing a no-fly zone, but that they're very much involved in actually aiding the rebels on the ground. So this begs the question in terms of what will be the next step from the international community, despite the fact that we hear the international community insisting that it's actually not going to get involved in terms of foot soldiers. But the sense and the urgency on the ground here, from what we're hearing from the rebels and certainly the criticism coming out of the Tripoli government, puts the suggestion on the table that that might be something that might be under consideration. Now, NATO is officially supposed to take command of enforcing this no-fly zone on Sunday, but we're hearing criticisms from Paris and other countries. They're a little bit cautious in terms of how this will work. On the ground itself, rebel fighters also concerned that now that you have an enlarged leadership calling the shots, essentially it will be a lot more difficult to carry out intensive, united fighting on the ground. The African Union is coming to the party in terms of trying to facilitate some kind of dialogue between the opposition rebels and the Libyan government. They have been against foreign involvement from the beginning, and according to a Libyan delegation to the African Union, we hear that Gaddafi might be considering some kind of amenities. He might be prepared to meet with the rebels and possibly even call for early elections. But the rebels themselves have denied this outright. Number one, they don't believe it, and number two, they simply say that nothing short of Gaddafi actually stepping down from power is something that they would consider.
And Paula, we will continue to monitor your regular updates on our RT Twitter page. RT's Paula Slee, live from Tripoli. Thank you. Well, as Colonel Gaddafi's troops exchange fire with rebels and the coalition forces continue their strikes, many Libyans are fleeing their homes. Hundreds of thousands have already become refugees in the ongoing violence, and more are expected to join them, as RT's Yegor Piskunov now reports from the Libyan-Egyptian border.
So far, the humanitarian situation hasn't really improved much. Thousands of people are continuing to flee Libya each day, looking for safety and better living conditions. The main flow of the refugees is on Libya's western border with Tunisia, but many people are going to Egypt as well. We met this family. They were from Benghazi. They said that the humanitarian situation in the city is critical at the moment. They were saying how they're not actually fleeing because their home has been destroyed. They just don't feel safe there anymore, and said that they were going to wait out here in Egypt and see what's going on there. Maybe come back when things settle down. When it comes to Egypt, actually, many towns and cities near the Egyptian-Libyan border, security has been really strengthened there. Also, there have been changes on the Egyptian-Libyan border itself. If we hear that just several weeks ago, it was patrolled basically only by Egyptian border guards who were people who were letting people in and out of the country. Now it's being patrolled by both sides. There are representatives of the so-called national police in Libya who are also checking documents of the people that are going through the border. So maybe the opposition is gaining some more control over the situation, and perhaps just some plain discipline. But judging by these figures, thousands of refugees each day, and in total, according to the UN, over 300,000 people have already fled Libya. The situation hasn't improved much, and the goal of the whole military operation by the alliance, which was to improve the lives of ordinary people and make it safer for ordinary people to live there at the moment in Libya, that still has not been changed, unfortunately.